चेक करो आगे लाइव। So good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. With me, Mr. Mohammad Wasim Khan is joining as well for this webinar. And today's topic, we will cover the pretty much complex topic about hazard identification and risk management. And the reason why we choose this topic is that because there are some misconceptions when it comes to practically implementing the hazard identification and the risk management. And normally we see in the industry, the normal practice which is adopted by the industry experts is that the risk is identified, or risk assessment is done by the health and safety professionals, health and safety officers, or health and safety managers. During this session, we will try to highlight or identify the best possible way when it comes to the risk hazard identification and risk management. And to start with, we have added the most common hazards, and I'll hand over to Mr. Wasim. Mr. Wasim, if you would like to add something about the most common hazards.
Yeah, good morning all, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Today, as Mr. Shahid described to you, that we are going to discuss about the hazard identification and the risk assessment. That the most important part is to identify the hazards. For identifying the hazard, there are different ways that how you can identify the hazards. There are walkthroughs and observations, checking the processes, and as well as the historical data. Plus, the most important is consultation. When we are saying that we are going through walkthrough, in a walkthrough, the team or the person who is going to identify the hazards, he has to go to the work area or process area and visualize the hazards which he can do. This is a approach, is a common approach which everybody is doing usually, but it's not a thorough approach, because whenever you are doing visually, you are watching the hazards as per your perspective, as per your experience. But in that case, some of the hazards which are you are not aware, you can miss. So better approach is that you have to go step by step and increase your visibility. Like if you go for observation, in observation you have to go and observe the process from start till the end, and then you have to identify what kind of hazards are there in each and every process. The next step which is there is historical data. Whatever data is available for the incident and accidents in the previous years or previous time, you can study those data. In those data, you will see that what kind of incident happened and what were the root causes of those incident or accidents. From that data, you can better understand that what are the common hazards which are available in your workplace, and you can identify them, and later on you can do for the use for the risk assessment. The best solution is that consultation. In the consultation, usually you will go from top to the root cause, to the grassroots level. Means you will discuss with the top management, you will discuss with the process owners, you will discuss with the departmental heads, and even you will discuss with the workers which are directly involved in the processes. When you are discussing with them, means you are covering each and every point or each and every corner of that process. This is the best solution if you are want to identify the hazard in your workplace. Now, if we come to the hazards, there are some hazards which we display on the screen. These are the common hazards which are usually available in any kind of workplace. Like if you see the first sign, that is basically for the manual handling. Manual handling, whatever kind of work you are doing, when any kind of it's industry, it's a construction or any other kind of entity. So these kind of activities will be available in any kind of workplace. Fire hazards are there. It depends that what kind of processes you are performing, where heat process is involved or any kind of open flames are involved. So there is a possibility of fire. The second possibility chance is that because of the electricity, that is also a main activity which can be cause fire as well. Electrical hazards, they can be because of electricity, there can be different kind of accident or incident possibility, because electricity is also itself a hazard, because if it is not used properly, it can cause harm to anybody else. There are some toxic hazards are available. These kind of hazards can be in the process of any kind of chemical handling, or any kind of other gases are involved in any kind of process. So these kind of hazards can be available in this kind of activities. So these are the common hazards which you will find in any kind of workplace.
Do we have any question, Mr. Shiraz?
I think there is a question from
Yep.
economics also considering common hazard.
Yes.
We will go to that. The idea of the training is that since we are waiting for more participants to join as well, so Mr. Wasim was just giving an overview. We put the course in a structure. We will go ahead with the course and we'll show you the most common hazards and the cause of those hazards. Then we'll discuss about the risk methodologies 3x3, 5x5, 10x10, and then we will see the best practices related to that. So it's not only the one slide that we are sharing with you, there will be more slides to come.
It is just an introduction that how we have to start this process and complete that process basically. Because identification of hazards is the core and the first initial step of the risk assessment. Later on, when we identify those hazards, we have to evaluate the associated risks. Whatever the hazards are there, there can be risk along with those hazards. Sometimes one hazard has a one risk or individual risk. Sometimes multiple risks are associated with each hazard. So we have to identify which kind of risks are there. In the next step, we have to evaluate those hazards, means what are the severity and the probability of those hazards or those risks. When we are saying probability, most of the people, maybe sometimes they are not understanding what is the meaning of probability. Probability means the chance of occurrence, that how many times it can be occurs or you can be involved in any kind of incident or accident. When we are saying consequences, means the result or the severity of those accidents if you are involved in any kind of incident or accidents. Risk is a combination of these two, the probability and the consequences, or in simple words, if we say the chances of involving in the accident and the severity of the accident if you are involved in any kind of incident or accident. Once these steps are done, then you have to go to the next step, that is establishing the controls for those hazards. Because identifying the hazard, evaluating the risk assessment is not done at this point. Obviously, you have to identify the controls, or we can say the mitigation measures, how you can control them, how you can mitigate those kind of risks and hazards.
And we have a question, I think.
Yeah.
Mr. Muhammad Ali, you raised the hand. It was right here. Something happened. Ras, can you check? Mr. Muhammad Ali was there. He raised the hand. But I cannot see him now. Gentlemen, please, if you're raising the hand, just keep it raised so that we can identify your name and then surely allow you to talk, so that we can ensure your participation as well. No, we can take the questions. It's not a problem. So we can move on.
So no questions?
So
Okay.
start with that session. We have already put some terms and definitions which we need to understand. The first one is about hazard. What is a hazard? So as per the ISO guidelines or international terms and definitions, we put the definition as source, situation, or act with potential to cause injury or ill health. Now, normally when it comes to the health and safety professionals, they feel like health and safety is all about injuries. They usually exclude the part of ill health. So surely when it comes to occupational health and safety management system, and we are talking about the hazards, we have to consider the injuries caused during or due to the work practices or in the time when we are doing the job for the company or any activity for the sake of our organization, plus what are the impacts on the health of our employees. That will be considered part of the hazards as well. And secondly, we have hazard identification, which is a process to identify the hazards and their respective characteristics. Because if we understand the characteristics of the hazards, only then we will be able to properly or effectively identify the respective probability and the severity related to the hazard. And then we have purpose of hazard identification. Why we do the hazard identification is basically help us or enables us in the second step or third step to identify the risk associated with each hazard. If, as I said earlier, that most common problem in the industry is that people put the responsibility or liability of this whole process of risk assessment on the health and safety professionals. Maybe in your organizations you are referring them as health and safety officers, health and safety manager, or a person who's responsible for health and safety. Somehow other employees or members of the organization start thinking when it comes to hazard identification and risk management, it's his sole responsibility. He is the one who will identify risk for all activities or risk associated with the product or the services of the organization, which is the entire wrong approach. We receive a question from I don't know, Miss or Miss Savio, regarding the recording of this session. All of our sessions are going live on our YouTube channel. I believe Mr. Shiraz had already put the link for the YouTube channel. You guys can visit the link. You can subscribe to our channel. You'll find the link for this training, and we each week we do a live session, and plus there is an interview recorded from the industry experts that are available on our YouTube channel. So all of that is available there. Even this session is going live right now on the YouTube as well. And we always appreciate for the participants to like and subscribe to our channel. And surely when it comes to like and share of the videos that are going live, we nominate few people for the free certifications as well. So people are attending the training. Obviously after the training, they will receive emails from our side who will be nominated, who shared and like or subscribe to our channel. Few of them will be nominated. We take 20% of the whole number of participants and award them with the free certificates for each training. So if you subscribe to our channel, and you can watch all the videos there and like the videos and share the videos, so other people can get benefit from there as well.
Can I add up something here?
1 second, let me complete that, then I'll give you the floor. So there you have a chance to win a free certificate, and at the same time answering your question, the recordings are available there for the session. Yeah, Mr. Mohammed.
Actually, why we are saying you all this, because one benefit is there that you will get certificate as well, but the core purpose is there that once you share this kind of links, so you are spreading the information, you're spreading the awareness, which is more important. Our purpose is to present all these things are here to spread awareness so that people can be aware, because root cause people like the safety officers or the local workers, they are having less chances to get aware frequently. So if you are sharing this kind of knowledge with everybody, because now everybody has smartphone, they can access anywhere. So if they are having this kind of links, they can share, they can see, they can watch again and again, so their knowledge will be increased and they can protect themselves and other people as well along who are working along with them. This is the basic purpose of our this kind of trainings and sessions.
And the most important purpose, to make your customers. I'll add that. When nobody does there's no free lunches in the world. So what we are trying
Exactly.
to gain more traffic on our side, and obviously if you get interested in our services, you can surely get approached to our account managers and our customer service team. Surely they'll address your requirements. Okay. So we'll move to the last definition that we put here in this slide, that is about risk. So risk is basically an effect of uncertainty. And how we assess the risk is basically, it's a normal way. People take it the probability and multiply with the severity of the hazard, and we get a risk value. That's a normal practice. When it comes to the identification of risk value, we use probability multiplied by severity. At the same time, if you want to go more in that, what you can do is you can consider probability, you can consider the severity, plus you can consider that as well the frequency. When I say frequency, that means you can refer to the past history of the organization as well. For a certain type of hazard, what was the impact or how the organization is having past data available to that. Maybe it's very much probable in other industry types, or maybe similar industry where you are working in, but you don't have past incidents related to that kind of hazard. So that's another approach which you can adopt, but most commonly when it comes to risk or risk evaluation, risk assessment, we use probability multiplied by the severity, and it gives us a risk value. And why we do the risk assessment basically, or why we identify these risk values, it gives us an opportunity to identify what are the important or high priority points which we need to address. Any hazard which is coming up with the high risk value is to be considered as an prioritized point, because for that we have to immediately have some kind of controls in place. In our last slide, we will talk about the hierarchy of controls and when we have to review the risk assessment. So moving onward, we have added most common hazards or hazard types. So I'll give the floor to Mr. Wasim. He will take you through the hazard types. Yes, Mr. Wasim.
As far as the hazard types are concerned, because when we are going to identify the hazards, we have to see what kind of types are there. Means if we are categorizing the hazards in types, means we are covering all kind of scopes. Like if you see the screen, the first one is the physical hazard. When we are saying physical hazards, so these are the points which we can include in the physical hazard type. Like it can be slip and falls. Whenever some person is walking around and there are some kind of objects are available, there can be entanglement with those kind of objects, so person can be slip and fall. Fall from height, whenever the people are working on the height. When we are saying height, if we say go in measurement, it's a different way, but to better understanding, if you are standing on the platform or any kind of object double than your height, that is called a height. So if you are working on height and you can fall, there can be a possibility of fall from height. There are different reasons that can be discussed in some other program or some other sessions. Confined space means any kind of space where the restriction of entry and exit, means it can be anything. It can be a tube, it can be a trench, it can be underground basement. Means if we describe the confined space, means the circulation of air is not possible. There is a one way to go inside and the same way to come outside. That's why we call it a confined space. There can be ergonomic hazards which are also linked to the physical hazards. There are postures, sitting postures, working postures are there in ergonomic hazards. Manual handling, again, how we are holding the heavy objects, how we are carrying them, how we are lifting them. Those are the examples of the manual handling hazards. Hot works as well. Hot works are usually not available in all kind of premises or all kind of workplace, but if it is there, so there is a possibility of hot works which are included in the physical hazards. When we are saying the chemical hazards, and the chemical hazards are involved in the workplace where you are dealing with any kind of chemicals or gases. What kind of hazards can be? There are vapors, gas release, particle discharge in the air. So these are the common hazards in the chemical hazards. Contacts and absorption, like if you are touching any kind of chemical or acid with the bare hand without the gloves, it can be absorbed in your skin and it can be dangerous to your health.
Mr. Wasim, we have a question here.
Yeah.
From Mr. Vijay.
Yeah.
Do you consider washrooms as confined space? Also, will it be fall under biological hazards? Biological hazards, talking about the
No.
UAE, I would say it will not come, because in UAE, the authorities have very strict control on each type of chemicals. They will not give you a chemical to be used in the washroom. that is creating a biological hazard. And confined space, I believe Mr. Wasim
No,
can put some light
because
as well.
a washroom cannot be a confined space. As I described before, the confined space is a space where the entry and exit is only one. If we go into the washroom, there is ventilation system, there is exhaust fans, there is ventilation windows are available, and sometimes if you are central AC building, there's AC outlets are there, so it cannot be a confined space.
Please, you can continue with your stuff.
Yeah. For the chemical hazard, other one is the incompatibility. Degradation of material is also a chemical hazards. When we are considering the chemical hazards, we have to consider these aspects whenever we are working in any kind of related work environment.
And related to the chemical also, there's a misconception when it comes to the MSDS. People just put the MSDS in the store, and when it comes to risk assessment, the requirements as identified in the MSDS related to the chemicals are not considered. This is most common practice, not to consider the hazards which are defined in the MSDS of each chemical. So make sure when you are doing a risk assessment and when it comes in your work activity or in your workplace or organization, when there are chemicals involved, you have considered the requirements identified in the MSDS, and also make sure that hazard identified in your MSDS are part of your risk assessment. Obviously, in the MSDS, there is recommended controls identified, but you have to make sure those controls are applicable as per your workplace, as per your processes or activities, how you do. So again, what we are trying to do here is make the hazard identification and risk assessment process a detailed one, considering each and every kind of chemical hazards. So, yes, Mr. Wasim, please.
Yeah, the third one is the biological hazards. In the biological hazards, there are allergies, there can be pathogens. So these are the main common things which are associated to the biological hazards. Physical hazards, again, when we are saying the physical hazards, these are most common, which are available in any kind of workplace. First top one is the physical environment, wherever we are working, how the situation is there, how the sitting arrangements are there, is there any rest areas or not available or not available. There are many things which can be in physical environment. The next point is the physical violence. Physical violence happen because especially when we are working in UAE, there are people coming from different countries, different regions. They have different kind of mindset. So it is very common that whenever we are working here, we are not from the same area, with not from the same region, not from the same language. So there can be possibility that violence can be happen. So this can be considered as a major when we are discussing the physical hazards. Excessive.
If you let me know this one. And I would like to add there as well why we add the point number 4, psychosocial hazards, as one of the hazard types, because I have experienced more than like 20 years now. If I want to be specific, I'm working in this field of ISO certifications or management system standards. It's about 23 years now. And from last 12 years, I'm just doing the audits. Before that, I was a consultant. What I have seen during all my experience in the industries, the psychosocial type of hazards are not considered part of the risk assessment. Nobody cares the work conditions. People think when it comes to health and safety management system and relevant hazard identification is the accidents, incident, or what the problems which you face or the hazards which you face on the site while working only. Psychosocial hazards are relevant to your work environment. Are you working from 8 to 5? People are having lunch breaks properly. If they need certain breaks, the organization or the health and safety responsible personnel, whether they have considered those, maybe you have a stress in the workplace. Again, you have to consider that also, because if the workplace environment is stressed out, it will have an impact on your health. Could be mental health, and which I already highlighted in the second slide, where we're talking about the term and definitions, that it's not only the injuries we are talking about. We are talking about the overall health of our people, our employees, our team members, when it comes to their physical health plus their psychological health as well. So the last point which we added here is relevant to the psychological issues, you can say. Working overtime could be an issue. Even companies are paying for the overtime, but think of a person who's working overtime every day. His normal job is 8 hours, he's working 4 hours extra every day. Do you think after 1 month he'll be capable of doing a job properly or effectively? It's not possible. So we have to consider the psychosocial hazards as well. We have to review our work environment or office environment or site environment thoroughly. If somebody is stressed out, surely we are inviting the physical violence. It's not only, as Mr. Wasim said, that we have in UAE multiple nationalities, people belong to multiple cultures. It's not only that. If the office environment is stressed out, we are inviting the problems related to health and safety management system. And physical violence is one of them. Having people doing their job ineffectively, also an issue which is arising from the stress in the work environment. Stress, it can be caused from the different sources. So we are not going into detail. Those kind of sources, you can do your thorough study of your workplace when you are doing the hazard identification. So yeah, Mr. Wasim, you can move to the excessive workload. I think I covered, but
Yeah,
so
it
you
is
can
covered. So I think you sufficiently covered.
Mr. Ziaur Rahman, how the intimidation affect the personal capability of an individual or any firm? Welcome, Mr. Zia, to the session. You would like to answer?
You can explain more.
How the intimidation affect the personal capability of an individual or a firm? Surely, if we are intimidating people other than doing their job, it will affect adversely on the personal capability. He will not be focused in doing the work. He'll be acting, or I would say reacting aggressively, not for the work, but maybe the issue that is there. And obviously, if more people are there, it will affect the organization or firm's capabilities as well. So that's the reason I was already covering that one, that we have to consider the psychological effects, psychological issues when it comes to the hazard identification. I hope I answer your question. So these are the hazard types.
Yeah.
Now we can start with the risk assessment methodologies. You can start.
Okay. For the risk assessment, how we can identify or how we can assess the risk, there are two things as we discussed before, the probability and the severity. For this kind of assessment, we are using different kind of matrices. Like there is a 3x3 matrices available, 5x5, 10x10, and so on. Basically, in this kind of matrix, we are evaluating or assessing our risk on the basis of defined numbers. Like if you see the screen, we are saying that if it is 1 means highly unlikely, means it is having no severe effect. If it is, we are giving the rating of 1. If we are giving the rating of 2, means there are some kind of effects available, or we can say it's unlikely, but there can be possibility of any kind of incident or accident. When we are saying 3, means it's having a severe effect, or it can be result into incidents or accidents. Similar to that, for the consequences, it's same. If we are putting 1, means slightly harmful. If we are putting the number 2, it's harmful, or if we're putting the number 3, it's extremely harmful. Now, when we are assessing the risk, we are using these two terms, likelihood and the consequences. It will be likelihood multiplied by consequences. For example, if we are assessing any risk and we are giving the rating of 2 as the probability, and we are giving the severity as 1, so it becomes 2 into 1 is 2. Means it's a acceptable risk. Means there is no additional controls are required. Whatever the applicable controls are available, they can control that risk or we can mitigate into that section.
We have a raise hand.
Yeah.
Mr. Sarat Sajeev. Supposed to be there, suddenly disappear. Mr. Sarat, you would like to say something? If you have a question, you can put it in Q&A section. Okay, so you can continue.
Similar, if we are going to the excessive one, like if we are giving the probability of any kind of identified risk with the 3, and we are giving the severity as well with the 3, so it means it is become 9, which is unacceptable risk. Means at that point we have to stop the operation, we have to stop the process, and we have to re-evaluate the risk assessment, and have to go through all process from start to end, and we have to identify the root cause, why it is happening, and what are the controls we can apply. After applying sufficient controls, evaluate them, review them, and then you can start that kind of operation.
So as Mr. Wasim already mentioned that there are multi types of risk methodologies or metrics. There could be 3x3, there could be 5x5, and let me show you what is 5x5 looks like. Something like this, 5x5 rating matrix, or you can choose 10x10 matrix rating matrix as well. Now the important point or important thing is when we are deciding what kind of risk matrix we will be using.
Is there any question?
So no, there's a suggestion that there's the value is wrong here. It should be 4. It happens. Mr. Sir, thank you so much. We'll try to ask the department to fix it, who's working on the development of the training materials. We have some time, we have to stick with that. So I was talking about the importance of choosing a right risk matrix as per your organization's requirement. For small organizations, it's advisable that they will go to adopt 3x3 matrix. For mid-size organizations, it's always recommendable to go with 5x5 risk matrix, and for large organizations they can opt to go for 10x10 or maybe 15x15, 20x20, or 25x25 even. It's up to them. Reason being, why when the organization becomes big, or we are talking about the large organization, why we are recommending that they have to choose 10x10 or 15x15 matrix? Because the matrix with the smaller numbers you choose, it will give you very less options when it comes to defining the controls. Like the way you are seeing this matrix on the screen, 5x5. Here we have 5 type of risk classifications. We have low, moderate, high, and extreme. If I go back, here we have trivial, acceptable, moderate, substantial risk, and unacceptable risk. So when we are opted to choose a risk matrix which is giving us more options to address the identified risk, it will basically impacting the investment required. Because when we talk about the controls of identified risk, it means spending money, spending valuable resources of the organizations. Maybe we need to train the people, maybe we need to change our processes, or maybe we need to source some kind of machinery to improve the work practices, or last but not the least, maybe we need to procure PPEs like the helmets, maybe the gloves, safety shoes.
So maybe we have to do engineering controls and do amendments or something.
Exactly. So if your work practices or the organization is large, you can consider to go for 10x10 matrix, so that when we are going in detail to do the hazard identification and risk assessment, we can assign the proper values of probability and the severity for the identified hazards. Again, I would like to highlight, which Mr. Wasim talked in the beginning, the process of identifying the hazards, because I feel like there is some problem going on with that. The problem again is that when it comes to the hazard identification, misconception or mispractice in the market is that the HSE guys, they will try to do it on their own.
Not try to do. Actually, organization, they are putting the burden on that person that you are the safety professional. It's your job and you have to perform the job only. Basically, this kind of practice is going on.
Sometimes they are justifying the job. Sometimes they want to do that. I'm a Superman.
I'm the
or
Superman,
I'm the Batman,
exactly.
or maybe the Iron Man. That I can do everything. I can save the organization from the incidents or accidents which will be result of having ineffective risk assessment in place. The best methodologies are always involve the relevant personnels when it comes to the hazard identification. Okay. Mr. Ali, we have a question from Mr. Ali. Mr. Ali, I'm not able to understand the question. What's your purpose, 3x3 or 5x5? If you can just put the question in detail so we can address the answer.
We already explained what is why the people are using 3x3 and 5x5.
Which we prefer, okay. We don't prefer anything. As I said earlier, that it is depending on the complexity of the business type.
Exactly.
Which we are talking about. If it's a small organization, you don't have resources specifically for where I was.
Resources.
Depending on the sources, they don't have specific sources for the health and safety. Then it will be very difficult to implement a 5x5 matrix or 10x10 matrix. And also, you have to ensure that the matrix you are choosing, it's not adding any extra burden on your organization. See, the sole purpose of ISO, or one of the principle of ISO, is to avoid the rework, avoid the extra work, have an impact where we can reduce the cost of our businesses or cost associated with our businesses in an effective way that it will not impact the outcome of the organization or process. So if a small organization is adopting to go with, let's say, 10x10 matrix, it will be a comprehensive process to reach on a conclusion that what is our risk values for each identified hazard. And one more thing also, you have to consider the severity or the risk category of your organizations, because certain business types are coming under low risk entities. For example, the trading companies, software companies, I would say as well, they are coming under the low risk. When we talk about construction sector, it's from mid to high range. We consider them at mid to high range when it comes to the health and safety risk classification. But when we are talking about oil and gas, it's very high.
Always high.
It's always high. So when it's a high risk business category, we can consider to go for 10x10 or 15x15 matrix, because we have to consider each and every activity and associated hazard in a proper fashion, in a very detailed way. But when an entity is associated with the low risk type of category, for example, a trading company, we know that there is very less hazards which will have a very severe impact on the health of the employees, and at the same time which cause an accident or incident to an employee. So again, choosing a right risk matrix is very important, and the responsible person in the organization, the health and safety responsible person, in collaboration with the management, should take a decision what kind of risk matrix they will adopt. Again, there are misconceptions when it comes to the health and safety management will just hire a health and safety personnel and he will come up with the standard procedure or SOP that, okay, we will use 5x5 matrix without thinking the impact of that adoption in their business. We have to make sure the methodologies we are adopting are not adding any extra burden on the business. Everybody wants to do best. They want to have the best possible implementations, but we have to consider all the limitations associated with that, associated to our business. We cannot think like for a startup company. Let's say we have a startup company who will develop the softwares. So they will not have a practices which is adopted by Microsoft in place. If they want to do similar what Microsoft did, they have to go back in 1980s where Microsoft started. You are a startup, think what they did in the startup.
Exactly.
So choosing the matrix, it's again responsibility of the organization. We don't recommend something, we don't frame our mind that this is the organization, they could have 3x3 or 5x5 matrix. Whatever the procedure is in place, as auditors we go and check that. And as I said earlier, there is a third thing that you can associate with that also. You can think of probability, you can think of severity, and you can think of the frequency, your past historical data as well. That similar hazards are happening in your company or no. If it's not happening in your company, it will become less prioritized for you and means it will have less risk value, and then obviously we will not invest in our valuable resources on something which is not happening in our business, specifically talking about our industry. So these risk metrics which we are showing on the screen are most commonly used. You can alter the risk matrix as per your organization need. You can consider obviously the likelihood or probability. You can consider the consequences, right? You can consider it with the past history of your organization, which I'm referring as a frequency, plus you can take the benchmarking values of the similar industry as well. But once we are designing our risk matrix, there is a way we can follow the most commonly available, but we can design our own risk assessment methodology as well. And normally that is there. And we have added some slides, like for example, what we are trying to emphasize here as well. And people make the mistake as well that, okay, we adopted a 5x5 matrix, and now instead of referring to their procedural requirement or methodological requirement, they will start using their own knowledge on that. When an organization is putting a methodology for the risk assessment in place, they will define something like what you are seeing on the screen. You don't need to think by yourself, okay, how to put value for probability from 1 to 5. Your risk assessment methodology will give you principles on that. If you see on the screen, the reason of showing you this screen is that always refer to your risk methodology. So in this case, where I can consider one for the probability is improbable,
yeah,
very unlikely, never happened in the similar industry in UAE. So it's just an example. It could be UAE, any other country as well. So I'm taking a hazard and I'm reviewing my principal statements. Against each statement, we have a value given. So always consider your risk methodology, not just your past experience, that what you think, what will be the meaning of 1, what will be the meaning of 2 in probability, what will be the meaning of 3. Always refer to your risk methodology. When you prepare your risk methodology, you have to follow that. You want to add something, Mr. Wasim?
Yeah, for the 5x5 matrix, why we are using these different kind of matrices? Because as we are increasing the numbers, we are having more options to evaluate. Because some kind of process, they have multiple kind of activities going on in similar time. In this kind of situation, similar hazards having different kind of severity in one time. So if you are going with the 3x3, you are evaluating only like 1 or 2 or 3. But if you are using 5 by 5, you have more options as per the conditions, as per the situations available, and you can more cascade them as per the requirement of the associated hazards and when you are evaluating the risks.
We have a question here from Mr. Vijay again. Can the ratings be changed in the future depending
Yes.
on the nature of the work activity?
Exactly.
Is it flexible? How frequently should this document be reviewed? How frequently? Sorry. Let's wait for some time. We have the answer available in our last slide.
Yeah.
I'll not answer now
We are going to
because
discuss
we'll
in
be
future.
going and coming back. It's not a good approach. So let's go in a structured way. Once we reach on the last slide where we'll talk about the hierarchy of controls, and when we have to review the risk assessment, it's there. So you have to just be patient with us for a few more minutes maybe. Okay. So we have the values in our risk methodology for the probability. We have the values for the severity ratings as well. Let me quote a couple of examples for that. For example, the hazard will not result in serious injury or illness or has a remote possibility of damage without any loss of time. So I can, when something is associated with this statement, I can give the value for the severity 1. If I read the third one, value for 3, the hazard can result in serious injury or illness, property or equipment damage. So in this scenario, when I'm seeing a hazard, let's say driving hazard. So in driving hazard, is it possible that person who's sitting in the car could result in a serious injury? So
Physical injury. Yeah.
physical injury or illness. So we can give a value for 3.
Also, the vehicle can be damaged, so property damage will be there.
Exactly. So don't just use your past experience or knowledge. Always consider your methodology. It's very common mistake that we are seeing, that health and safety professionals, they will use their past experience because obviously they know what 5 by 5 mathematics means. But what happens when we review their methodology, risk assessment methodology, and the values given in the risk register, it differs. I will not say it's wrong. I'm saying the word differs from your organization protocols.
Exactly.
You are right, maybe right on your thing, but we have to follow the risk assessment methodology. And when it comes to the overall risk values, always the methodology include something like what you're seeing on the screen. That if the value is coming between 1 to 5, or here in this case is 1 to 3 of the risk, then we consider it as a low risk. If it's coming 4 to 9, in this case, we're considering it medium, 10 to 16 will be serious, 70 to 25 will be high. Refer to your methodology. If you don't have a methodology, define it. After defining, follow it. The reason why we have to have an effective methodology in place is that anybody can refer to the methodology and can act according to that. It has to be an open approach within the organization. And our last part of this topic is about the risk control hierarchy and the management of change when it comes to the risk assessment. So, Mr. Wasim, I would like you to have a floor, and if you can explain the last slide.
No problem. As we were discussing before, so it is a continuation for that sequence. That management of change means that whenever we are going to apply any kind of controls, obviously the change happens. Whatever the processes are running, obviously when we identify and we evaluate our risks, and now we have to apply some controls to control them. When we are applying the controls, so changes occurs. When the changes occur, we have to manage those changes. So whenever we are justifying or we are setting some controls or applying the controls, we have to consider that the change should not be very high. If the change will be very high, the processes can be disturbed. Like if you are saying that remove the equipment, it is not possible. So we have to go with the actions which can be acceptable in any kind of scenarios. So it can fulfill the purpose of controls, as well as the change can be managed. Because whenever we are resulting in the change in negative side, it will be disturbing our processes. So we have to consider both the things: how we are applying the controls, what what is the effectiveness, and what will the change will occur on the application of those kind of controls. So this can be should be maintained. As far as the hierarchy of control is concerned, this is the flow which is identified, accepted by all kind of health and safety professionals, that how the hierarchy will come. First is the elimination, then substitution, then engineering controls, administrative controls, and then use of PPEs. Usually what is the practice in the market is that the organizations, they are providing the PPEs and they are considering we control the hazard or we control the risk. This is not a good approach. We have to go up to the level where both the things can match. Means the administrative, the financial things can be matched, also the safety can be matched, which we call in terms in OSHA, we call it ALARP. ALARP is a point where the expense on that control and the effectiveness of those controls can be matched in acceptable level. That is called the ALARP point. So we have to see that up to which level we have to go and how we have to control those hazards. Like if we talk the elimination means that whatever the hazards are there, remove those hazards, which is not possible in all the times. Like if we are saying electricity is a hazard, if you are removing the electricity, there is no hazard. So it is not possible nowadays because everything is run by electricity. So elimination cannot be possible. We have to evaluate which step is effectively possible. When we are removing any kind of hazards, we have to go with the controls according to the hierarchy. And when we are saying substitution, means we have to select any object or any machinery or any product which can be substitute to the existing one, but less harmful. Like if we talk about the chemicals, there are chemicals available which are having environment friendly, which are having less effect as compared to the other chemicals. So we can use those kind of chemicals instead of the chemicals which are having more effect on environment. So this is called a substitution. When we are saying engineering controls, means the controls which are not produced by the manufacturer, but we are applying for the safety measures, like gardening, that we are put some additional guards, we are putting some additional handrails, we are putting fencing. So these are called the engineering controls. Like if we are saying that if we are talking about the compressed gas cylinders, some kind of cylinders, they are not coming with the supporting guards. So if we are putting them with the chains, we are putting them in a cage, lock them, restrict the access. So these are called the engineering controls. When we are saying the administrative controls, means in the administrative controls, all the processes, documented process will come. Like if we are developing policies, we are developing procedures, we are developing manuals, we are developing work instructions. All these are in administrative controls, and the training on those controls is called administrative controls. Because if you are developing and you're not communicating, you are not trained your people on those kind of developed documentations, so the purpose will not be fulfilled. And at the last, the PPs are required when you think that all these are out of our control or we cannot control 100%, then we are using the support of PPEs, that it can be an additional to our controls to help the people who are working in our workplace. So this kind of this is a scenario that how you can apply this hierarchy of control. Not consider only one thing, consider what possible things are there which you can apply. Maybe you have to apply 2 or 3. We have to apply engineering controls. Maybe on the same hazards you have to apply administrative controls, and you have to apply the PPEs. So whatever is the possible, you have to go up to that level now. I hope that it is clear to you. If you have any questions about this hierarchy of control and management of change, we are available for your answers, questions.
So
If you can add up something on the hierarchy of controls.
I will add on the, no, not on the hierarchy. I will talk about the management of change, since we have a question from Mr. Vijay. So the specificity of reviewing a risk assessment is basically associated with the activities or the management system requirements of any organization. Whenever we have some changes in the activities of an organization,
So you just lost interaction with your viewers.
it's okay now. We are about to finish now.
Okay.
They cannot see me, it's okay. Sometimes I have to be hidden, baby. Yeah? I have to hide myself. Should not be a problem. Hopefully they can hear me.
Just check if they can respond by the hearings or by message or
So I
something.
believe.
Okay.
So anyway, I was talking about the management of change. In the management of change, we review the risk assessment. When we review, whenever there is a change in our work activity, whenever there is a change in our manpower, and at the same time, at least minimum once a year, once we do our management review meeting. If you see the requirements of ISO 45001 2018, in that one, you will find out that risk assessment has to be reviewed minimum once a year prior to the management review meeting. So if we don't have any changes in our work activities, in our manpower, maybe we don't have any new projects, so we don't need to review. We will review only before doing the management review meeting. Okay, Mr. Ikhlas. Hopefully, Mr. Vijay, I have answered your question. Next question we have is from...
Also, whenever there any kind of incident or accident happen, then again we have to
Yes.
do the review and reassessment.
Whenever, as Mr. Wasim said, whenever there is a non-conformance raised
Non-conformance, yeah.
in your management system
Non-compliance
or
happened.
non-compliance days, you have to review this risk assessment. Whenever there is an incident, a near miss, or accident occur, then we have to review our risk assessment. Then we have a question from Mr. Ikhlas. Can you clarify substitution? Substitution means finding an alternative way for doing an activity. Mean to say, let's take an example of manual handling. You are picking something from the ground and let's say putting on a high place, manually using your hand and your body. Alternative way or substitution could be that we have an equipment available that we can utilize for the same. Let's say you have a robot available. Instead of you performing the task, the robot will pick up the things and put them on a high place. So like this, we use the substitution, a substitute way or method to do the activity. So that is for the substitution. And last one, another question we have from Mr. Ziaur Rahman. Is there any example that can be referred for the elimination has been adopted in the risk control hierarchy, or which stage we have to go for elimination options? See, the purpose of hierarchy mean is that whenever we are having an hazard identified, so when we are planning now, we are planning to define a control. So what we have to keep in mind, the control hierarchy starts, first thing we will think of whether we can eliminate this activity or no. That is called elimination. That we will eliminate the activity completely. If this is not possible, then we go to the second option of substitution.
Can I add up?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, elimination actually, I understand your question that when we can apply the elimination. Elimination can be applied when the below 4 options are not possible. Like you cannot control the hazard with the PPEs, you cannot control the hazard with the administrative control, you cannot control the hazard with the engineering controls, you cannot control the hazard with substitution. There is no substitution available. Means when all the doors closed, the last chance is eliminated. Because you cannot, the human life is more important than the work. So you have to eliminate that machine, eliminate that process if you have it is uncontrollable. Uncontrollable means below 4 are not applicable. You cannot control them by applying these controls, so that in that case you have to eliminate. Otherwise, elimination is not the best solution. Elimination can be happen only when you are bound, when you are not able to control in any kind of by applying any kind of controls. Then the only solution is elimination. I hope you got your answer. If still you want to discuss something, we are available, inshallah.
So, Mr. Azhar, I think me and Mr. Wasim have answered your query. If you have still some queries, please let us know. Okay. So this was our session for today. Feel free to give us your comments, and if there are any more questions before we'll end the session for today. And I would like to add something here, that we receive your data through the registrations. We will be utilizing that for sending you the future updates on the coming events. Usually our weekly event is every Thursday or either Friday, one of these days. But obviously before having the event in place, we share the email notifications and obviously the registration links with all the people who are in our mailing list. At the same time, we request you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because you'll find more updates whenever we have an event going on. It goes live to our YouTube channel as well. So, are there any questions? Or if anybody likes to add their own past experience or their knowledge as well, we are quite open to that. You can raise the hand, then we can surely invite you in the meeting, so you can address the joinees as well.
Or this is the platform that if you think that in past you encounter with some kind of problem and you don't have solution at that time, so you can discuss that situation and maybe we can help you out. We can give our points on that, and you can control in the future if you are involving again, or if somebody is involving with a similar kind of condition, you can guide them on that.
Mr. Zia, raise your hand. I will allow you to talk, and you're most welcome. Please, you can unmute your mic and then you can speak surely.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
This is Arman from Pakistan. Currently, I'm pursuing my master's in environmental sciences here in Pakistan. So I just wanted to add one point that is quite a learning opportunity for myself, as I already have attended one course which was related to risk identification and sort of, the protocols and reading and stuff.
Yeah.
But I would like to say that it is more explicit. I got to learn about the industry thing, as Sir Shahid, I think he have mentioned about his experience and how we have implemented in different sectors. So yeah, it was quite good opportunity for myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Zia, for your feedback.
And also, I'm looking forward that if in future such sessions will be there, and you will share on different social platform, I'll try to convey the message to my friends, and I'll spread the word so that they can also be joined and get benefited.
Surely. Last week we covered the requirement of sustainable development goals, and obviously there was a guest. See, the topic we choose in the week, on the weekend or the start of next week, there will be an episode. We have another talk show where we invite the industry expert. They talk on that also. So last week we were mostly talking about the sustainable development goals and sustainability reporting. This week we choose the topic of this one, HIRA, hazard identification and risk assessment. And on Monday, we have next video coming in, which will be more on quality management system, or talking about the quality related issues. And we have an experienced guest who will be joining us. He has vast experience in UAE, specifically oil and gas and other industries as well. So obviously stay tuned for that. I cannot name that person now. So you have to go to the video to see who will be the expert talking about those issues. And thank you so much for your feedback. And as I said earlier, we will add you in our mailing list, and surely you will start receiving the weekly updates.
Once again, thank you so much. And yes, you can keep your surprise. And surely, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So if we don't have any more questions, I would like to say thank you on behalf of W3 Solutions, from myself and surely. Thank you, Mr. Wasim.
Welcome.
And on behalf of Mr. Wasim, all of you as well, thank you for joining this session. And we hope that you'll be part of our audience every week for the live sessions. Thank you so much, guys. And our chat room will be available for next few minutes. So if you have any comments still, you can drop in the chat, or any suggestions or any topic as well. If you want us to address in the coming weeks, we can address your specific topics as well. Thank you so much, guys.